The crisp December air usually fills me with a sense of nostalgic warmth, a comforting embrace of holidays past. But this year, as the plane descended through the twilight towards my hometown, a strange chill settled in my stomach, a premonition I couldn't quite shake. My name is Clara, and I was flying home for Christmas, a trip I'd anticipated with a mix of longing and trepidation, unaware that this would be the year I finally snapped, igniting a family firestorm that had been simmering for decades. For as long as I could remember, I had been the responsible one in my family, the quiet achiever, the reliable daughter, the one who always seemed to have a little extra, whether it was time, emotional support, or more often than not, money. My younger sister, Bethany, was the free spirit, the one who lived life on her own terms, which frequently meant on my terms, or rather, on my dime. My parents, bless their hearts, well, they were parents. They loved us, I suppose, but their love often felt conditional, especially on my ability to solve problems and smooth over financial rough patches. I'd sent them countless loans over the years, secret payments for car repairs, medical bills, even a chunk of their mortgage when things got tight. Nobody ever really asked, but I always felt the unspoken expectation, the subtle pressure that made saying no feel like a betrayal. This year, the call from my mother had been particularly effusive. "Clara, darling, we miss you terribly. Christmas just isn't Christmas without you here. You simply must come home." Her voice, usually a little distant, was laced with an almost desperate cheerfulness. I'd hesitated. A cross-country flight isn't cheap, and my own finances, while stable, weren't limitless. But the yearning for a genuine, uncomplicated family Christmas, one where I wasn't just a resource but a cherished daughter, was a powerful pull. I bought the ticket, an expensive red-eye, telling myself it was an investment in joy, in family bonds. Landing in the familiar airport, the scent of pine and stale coffee a peculiar comfort, I felt a flicker of that old hope. Mom was there, bustling, her arms open for a hug that felt a little too tight, a little too performative. "My girl, you're finally here," she exclaimed, her eyes scanning me, not for signs of fatigue, but almost for reassurance. Bethany and her two children, 7-year-old Lily and 5-year-old Oscar, were also there. Lily, a whirlwind of energy, immediately demanded my attention, while Oscar clung to Bethany's leg, eyes wide. Bethany offered a quick, distracted hug. "Thanks for coming, Clara. Kids are excited." No mention of the flight cost, the effort, just an assumption.
The first couple of days felt like a bizarre pantomime. My parents were overly solicitous, asking about my job, my life, but their questions felt superficial, lacking genuine interest. Bethany was constantly busy, always on her phone, always just about to do something with the kids, but never quite getting there. I found myself naturally stepping in, helping Lily with her crafts, reading Oscar a bedtime story. It felt normal, almost comforting, slipping back into the role of the dependable older sister, the capable aunt. But a tiny, insidious voice in the back of my mind whispered, "Is this why I'm here?" Then came the dinner, Christmas Eve, a quiet family meal. Dad was unusually jovial, Mom humming a little tune as she cleared the plates. The air felt thick with a forced cheerfulness. I was just about to offer to help with the dishes when Mom cleared her throat, a little too loudly. "So, Clara, darling, your father and I have a little surprise." She beamed, her eyes sparkling with an excitement that felt completely out of place given the context. My heart sank. My internal alarm bells began to clang. "Oh?" I managed, my voice suddenly dry. "Yes," Dad chimed in, a wide, almost goofy grin on his face. "We've booked a wonderful Caribbean cruise, a week of sunshine and relaxation. We leave on Boxing Day." My mind reeled. Boxing Day? That was 2 days away. "That's wonderful, Mom, Dad," I said, trying to sound genuinely happy, but a knot was tightening in my chest. "But what about Christmas and Bethany's kids?" Mom waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, don't be silly, dear. Christmas will be lovely. We'll have a wonderful day tomorrow, presents and all. And as for the children," her gaze shifted to me, a calculated, almost predatory glint in her eye. "Well, that's where you come in, isn't it? You're so good with them, Clara. You'll be a marvelous babysitter while we're gone." The words hit me like a physical blow. Babysitter. Free babysitter. For a week, while they vacationed. The realization washed over me, cold and sickening. This wasn't a family Christmas. This was a summons. I hadn't been invited home. I'd been recruited. I was the unpaid childcare, the live-in nanny, the walking ATM for any unexpected expenses that might arise. The investment in joy had just been revealed as a calculated deception. I felt a strange, hollow laugh bubble up inside me, but I swallowed it. My face, I imagine, was a mask of polite shock. "You want me to babysit for a week while you're on a cruise?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. Bethany, who had been silently scrolling on her phone, now looked up, a flicker of irritation crossing her face. "Well, yeah, Clara, it's not a big deal. They're your niece and nephew, and it's only a week. You're already here, right?" Her words, dripping with casual entitlement, were the final drop of acid.
I looked from my mother's expectant smile to my sister's indifferent shrug, and then to my father, who avoided my gaze, suddenly fascinated by the pattern on his dinner plate. In that moment, something inside me irrevocably shifted. The quiet, accommodating Clara, the one who always bent over backward, who always gave, broke. A new, steely resolve began to form. "Right," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but it carried an edge that made even my mother pause. "I'm already here." The next day, Christmas Day, was surreal. I went through the motions, wrapping presents, forcing smiles, playing with Lily and Oscar, who were blissfully unaware of the tension crackling beneath the surface. My parents were in high spirits, practically vibrating with excitement for their impending cruise. Bethany was, as usual, absorbed in her own world, occasionally snapping at the kids, then leaving them to me. I watched her, really watched her, and saw not just a sister, but a mirror reflecting decades of my own unwitting complicity. I spent the day mentally cataloging every single instance of their exploitation. The emergency loan for Bethany's rent that was never repaid. The time I paid for my parents' flight to a family reunion because they couldn't afford it, but then bought a new flat-screen TV the next month. The countless birthday and Christmas gifts for Lily and Oscar that Bethany would claim credit for. The emotional labor of being the family confidant, the mediator, the one who listened to all their problems without ever having mine heard. It was a long, bitter list. Boxing Day arrived with a flurry of activity. My parents, suitcases packed, were practically bouncing with excitement. "Now, Clara dear, the children are fairly self-sufficient," Mom began, handing me a crumpled $20 bill. "There's some food in the fridge, but you can always order pizza. Bethany will pop in, of course, to check on things." Bethany, meanwhile, was already making plans for her week of freedom, her phone pressed to her ear. "Oh, and Clara, could you maybe just spot me for a bit of groceries? I'm a little tight this week." She flashed a sweet, innocent smile, the same one she'd used to get me to pay for her college textbooks years ago. I took the 20, a symbol of their utter disregard for my time and effort. "Of course, Bethany," I said, my voice flat. "Enjoy your cruise," I said to my parents, my eyes meeting my mother's for a brief, uncomfortable moment. She quickly looked away. And then they were gone. The house, usually bustling, fell silent, save for the chatter of Lily and Oscar, who were now entirely my responsibility. The week that followed was a grueling test of endurance. Lily, bright but demanding, needed constant entertainment. Oscar, prone to tantrums, required endless patience. I cooked, cleaned, broke up sibling squabbles, drove them to the park, read stories, and navigated the minefield of their moods. Bethany popped in exactly once, for 10 minutes, to drop off some laundry and ask if I could lend her $50 for a new pair of shoes. I gave it to her, adding it to my mental ledger. Each day, the resentment festered, growing into a hard, cold knot in my stomach. I wasn't just tired. I was deeply, profoundly hurt. This wasn't family. This was a transaction, and I was always on the losing end. I saw my entire life, every sacrifice, every quiet contribution, laid bare as a pattern of being used. My breaking point wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a quiet, deliberate realization that this cycle had to end, and I was the only one who could end it. I began to meticulously document everything. I pulled up old bank statements on my laptop, highlighted transactions, noted dates and amounts. I scrolled through years of text messages, finding casual requests for money, vague promises of repayment, and my own quiet agreements. I even made a list of all the times I'd covered various family expenses,
from utility bills to school supplies. It was a staggering sum, not just in dollars, but in emotional currency. The evidence was irrefutable. My parents returned a week later, tanned and relaxed, oblivious to the storm brewing. "Clara, darling, you are a lifesaver," Mom gushed, giving me a quick, superficial hug. "The children were no trouble at all, I'm sure." Dad nodded, already distracted by the mail. Bethany, meanwhile, was already planning her next outing, leaving the kids to cling to my legs, tired and overstimulated. The stage was set for our final family gathering of the holidays, a belated New Year's dinner, meant to be a joyous reunion. All the usual suspects were there: my parents, Bethany and her children, my aunt and uncle, and a couple of cousins. The dining room table groaned under the weight of festive food, twinkling lights adorned the mantelpiece, and a fire crackled merrily in the hearth. It was the perfect picture of a loving family, a facade I was about to shatter. I sat quietly through the initial pleasantries, observing. My mother recounted tales of her cruise, my father chuckled at her anecdotes, Bethany chatted animatedly about her plans for the new year. Everyone seemed utterly content, basking in their manufactured happiness. My heart pounded, a drumbeat of anticipation and dread. I clutched the small, unassuming envelope in my lap, its contents a testament to years of silent suffering.
When the dessert plates were cleared and the coffee was being poured, I took a deep breath. "There's something I need to discuss with everyone," I said, my voice cutting through the gentle hum of conversation. Heads turned. My mother frowned, a flicker of annoyance crossing her face. "Clara, dear, can't this wait? We're enjoying ourselves." "No, Mom, it can't," I replied, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil within. I met her gaze, holding it. "It's about family, and about what family truly means." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. Bethany rolled her eyes, already bored. My father looked uncomfortable. I opened the envelope, pulling out a meticulously organized stack of papers. "I came home for Christmas, as you all know," I began, my gaze sweeping across the table. "I paid for my own cross-country flight, which cost me nearly $800. I did so because I believed I was coming home to share in a family Christmas, to be with the people I love." I held up a printout of my flight receipt. "Instead, I was informed 2 days before your departure that I was expected to babysit Lily and Oscar for a week, while you took a cruise." I looked directly at my parents. "A cruise you never mentioned, never asked if I was available for, and certainly never offered to pay me for." My mother's face flushed. "Clara, what on earth are you doing? This is completely inappropriate." "Inappropriate?" I countered, a bitter smile touching my lips. "What's inappropriate, Mom, is inviting your daughter home under false pretenses, turning her into an unpaid nanny, and treating her like a walking ATM. And that's just this Christmas." I turned to Bethany. "Bethany, do you remember the loan for your apartment rent back in 2018? The one for $1,500 that was never repaid?" I held up a highlighted bank statement. "Or the 3 times I covered your children's school supplies because you were a little tight?" Her jaw dropped, her face paling. Then I addressed my parents again, my voice gaining strength. "Do you remember the emergency car repair in 2019? The $3,000 I sent you? Or the time you needed help with the mortgage and I quietly transferred $5,000 into your account?" I laid out the evidence, one by one. These were not gifts, Mom and Dad. These were loans that were never repaid, never even acknowledged, simply absorbed into the expectation that Clara would always provide. The room was utterly silent. My aunt and uncle looked horrified. My cousins shifted uncomfortably. My father sat frozen, staring at the table, a look of dawning shame on his face. My mother, however, was incandescent with fury. "How dare you, Clara? After everything we've done for you, this is disgraceful. You're humiliating us."
"Humiliating you?" I repeated, my voice rising slightly, but still controlled. "You've been humiliating me for years. You've taken my money, my time, my emotional labor, and my generosity for granted. You've treated me as a resource, not a daughter. You flew me across the country, knowing full well you intended to use me, not to celebrate with me. And you did it because you knew I wouldn't say no." I looked at each of them, my gaze unwavering. "But I am saying no now." I gathered my papers, my hands trembling slightly, but my resolve firm. I'm not asking for repayment. I'm simply laying bare the truth. This pattern ends today. I will no longer be your quiet benefactor, your free babysitter, or your emotional punching bag. My love for you does not mean I am obligated to fund your lives or sacrifice my own well-being for your convenience. I stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor, the sound echoing in the stunned silence. I hope one day you can understand that this wasn't about money. It was about respect. It was about seeing me, truly seeing me, for the first time. With that, I walked out of the dining room, leaving behind the shattered remnants of what I once thought was a family Christmas. I didn't look back. The front door clicked shut behind me, not with a bang, but with a quiet, resolute finality. The chill in the December air no longer felt like a premonition. It felt like a cleansing breath, a promise of a future I would build on my own terms, free from the crushing weight of their expectations. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in a very long time, I felt truly, wonderfully free.